Welcome, history lovers, to a tale of power, passion, and the woman who brought a kingdom to its knees. Imagine the court of Henry VIII, a dazzling world of gold, music, and whispered secrets. Beneath every smile lurked ambition, and in this treacherous landscape, one woman would rise higher than anyone thought possible, only to face a fall more brutal than any before her. This is the story of Anne Boleyn, the queen who didn't just wear a crown, she shattered an empire's traditions. Born around 1501 into a family with high hopes, Anne wasn't destined for a quiet life. She was a pawn in her family's game of power, sent away to the sophisticated royal courts of the Netherlands and France. But this pawn learned the game better than anyone. She mastered languages, music, fashion, and the subtle art of charm. When she returned to England, she wasn't just another lady-in-waiting. She was a force of nature, witty, elegant, and armed with a sharp, intelligent mind that set her apart from everyone. It didn't take long for her to capture the attention of the most powerful man in the kingdom, King Henry VIII. At the time, Henry was married to the devout and loyal Queen Catherine of Aragon. For years, Catherine had failed to give him the one thing he craved above all else, a male heir. His desire for a son was becoming an obsession, a dark cloud hanging over his reign. When the captivating Anne Boleyn arrived, Henry was instantly smitten. He showered her with gifts and letters, expecting her to become his mistress, just like her own sister had. But Anne did the unthinkable. She said no. She refused to be a king's plaything, a temporary fancy to be discarded when he grew bored. This wasn't just a rejection, it was a challenge. And Henry, a man who had never been denied anything in his life, was utterly captivated. Anne's defiance, her mystery, and her intellect only fueled his obsession. She wasn't just a woman he wanted, she was a prize he had to win. This wasn't a simple courtly romance, it was the beginning of a revolution. For 7 long years, Henry fought to have Anne. His first hurdle was his marriage to Catherine. He desperately needed the Pope to grant him an annulment, claiming his marriage was invalid in the eyes of God. He sent envoys, he pleaded, he threatened. But the Pope, under pressure from Catherine's powerful nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor, refused. The Catholic Church would not bend to the will of one English king. Henry was trapped. His conscience, his dynasty, and his desire for Anne were all on the line, and it was here that Anne's influence became truly transformative. She wasn't just waiting passively. She was an active player, introducing Henry to radical new ideas, to reformist texts that questioned the Pope's authority. She argued that a king was God's chosen representative on earth, and no foreign power had the right to stand in his way. She didn't just capture a king's heart, she helped reshape his entire worldview. Faced with an unyielding Pope and fueled by Anne's arguments, Henry made a decision that would send shockwaves across Europe. If the Church wouldn't give him what he wanted, he would simply leave the Church. In an unprecedented move, Henry VIII broke with Rome, severed 1,000 years of religious loyalty, and declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England. The English Reformation had begun, not just for theological reasons, but for love, for power, and for Anne. With the Pope's authority gone, Henry's path was clear. In January 1533, he and a pregnant Anne Boleyn were married in a secret ceremony. His marriage to Catherine was declared void, and Catherine herself was banished from court, stripped of her title as queen. Just a few months later, on a glorious summer day, Anne Boleyn was crowned Queen of England in a lavish ceremony at Westminster Abbey. The streets of London were filled with pageantry, the bells rang out, and for a moment it seemed that Henry's long, arduous wait had finally been worth it. Anne had achieved the impossible. She had risen from a knight's daughter to the Queen of England. But the crown was heavier than she could have ever imagined. The entire kingdom now watched and waited. Anne's ultimate duty was to provide the heir that Henry had ripped his kingdom apart for. The nation held its breath. When she gave birth in September 1533, The news spread like wildfire. It was a healthy, beautiful baby, but it was a girl. Her name was Elizabeth. Henry was bitterly disappointed. The son he had gambled everything for had not arrived. Anne, ever confident, promised him that sons would follow, but they never did. A series of miscarriages and stillbirths haunted their marriage, turning the king's passion into frustration and then into poison. The court that had once marveled at her rise now plotted her downfall. Anne had powerful enemies who resented her influence and her Protestant sympathies. They whispered in the king's ear, planting seeds of doubt. They called her proud, ambitious, even a witch who had ensnared the king with spells. As Anne's star began to fade, Henry's eyes started to wander once more. This time they fell upon a quiet, gentle lady-in-waiting named Jane Seymour, Anne's complete opposite. In 1536, the trap was sprung. Anne was suddenly arrested and accused of a shocking list of crimes: adultery with multiple men, including her own brother, incest, and treason against the king. The charges were outrageous, a web of lies spun by her political enemies to clear the way for a new queen. The evidence was flimsy, based on coerced confessions and malicious gossip. Yet the king she had changed the world for, the man who had written her passionate love letters, did nothing to save her. He simply looked away. Her trial was a sham, a spectacle of betrayal designed to find her guilty. When the verdict was read, condemning her to death, Anne stood with unshakable dignity. She maintained her innocence to the end, her courage failing to waver even as everyone she trusted abandoned her. On the morning of May 19, 1536, just 3 years after her coronation, Anne Boleyn was led to a scaffold on the Tower Green. She faced the somber crowd not with fear, but with a calm resolve. Dressed in a gray gown, her famous dark eyes met the world one last time. She prayed for the king and for the future of her beloved daughter, Elizabeth. To spare her the clumsy horror of the axe, Henry had summoned an expert swordsman from France. With one swift, clean stroke, her life was over. Anne Boleyn was gone. But her story doesn't end there. Though her enemies believed they had erased her, Anne's legacy was just beginning. Her greatest triumph came through the daughter Henry had so readily dismissed. That baby girl, Elizabeth, would one day ascend the throne as Queen Elizabeth I. She would rule for over 40 years, becoming one of England's most powerful and beloved monarchs, ushering in a golden age of culture and exploration. Through Elizabeth, Anne's bloodline, her intelligence, and her spirit not only survived but triumphed, shaping an empire. Anne Boleyn's crown was forged in the fire of a king's desire and lost to the cold winds of fear and politics. Yet her influence echoed through centuries. She changed a king, a religion, and the very destiny of a nation. Her story is a powerful reminder that history is often written by those who dare to defy expectations, and that true legacy is not about how long you reign, but about the change you leave behind. If you were captivated by Anne's incredible story, imagine the countless other tales of powerful women waiting in the shadows of history. Subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the past. Thank you for watching.